debate. We're taking a look at the situation in Homs and what the world is going to be doing about it. With us to talk about it is Amr Abed Rabo, photojournalist who is just back from Beirut, where you opened an exhibit there.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, it seems a bit ridiculous now to talk about the exhibit. And among the very moving things today, when I heard about Remy Oshlik death, I went to see his Facebook page to see where he was exactly, and I saw that his very last post was to talk about my expo and to link his people, his friends to the expo. So yes, I just opened the expo, an exhibition, but we won't talk about it now.
No, it's not the place. But anyway, Amr, who is back with us here in Paris, also joining us is Joshua Landis of Oklahoma University, and who follows all things Syrian on SyriaComment.com, and Suat Kiniklioglu of Turkey's ruling AK party, who also heads the Stratum Consulting Group. A little piece, and I want to read this to you, Amar. It's from a retired UN general, Louis Mackenzie, in the Toronto Globe and Mail. He called, the piece is called "The Road to Damascus Leads Through Moscow." He talks of an old Russian military adage. It says, "Never send a soldier where an artillery round can go first." Many Syrian officers were trained in Russia, and unfortunately, they frequently follow this advice. So, in other words, if you want to get the Syrians to stop shooting, he's saying, in effect, is look at their tactics, they're Russian, and look at who influences them, the Russians. Should we be looking at Moscow a lot more?
I'm not sure. You know, the Syrian regime has been, since the very first day, very much into conspiracy, international theory. They talked about Saudi Arabia, they talk about Qatar, they talk about the US, the Mossad, the Hariri family, you name it. I mean, everybody has been in the conspiracy theory. And now we are almost into their logic, talking about Russia and China and Beijing, etc. I'm not sure it's that... I'm not sure this is the way we have to go. I mean, the problem began from Deraa in the south of Syria, and the real problem today of the regime is in Deraa, it's in Zabadani, it's a suburb of Damascus, it's in Homs, etc. I mean, Idlib, many cities where the uprising is very important. I think the solution will come from there. The solution will be political. The solution will not be with shelling, and killing. I mean, this will have to stop at some time. And unless there are real talks, unless there is a recognition of the legitimacy of the movement, we're going nowhere. You can go to Moscow, you can go to Beijing, you can go to New York. The solution is not there, in my opinion.
All right, so the situation will come in the end through the Syrians. One man who agrees with you on the France 24 debate Facebook page, when we asked should the West pressure Assad or should they be pressuring his backers, is our good friend Meir Javandafar, an Israel analyst, a political scientist there. He says between the two, I would focus on Assad. So he agrees squarely with you. Nonetheless, we've seen in the past 24 hours, China, Russia, Iran, all make declarations of support for the Syrian government. 2 Iranian naval ships returning through the Suez Canal on Tuesday after docking at the Russian naval base in the Syrian port of Tartus. No word on whether that trip was symbolic or whether arms were dropped off. But what we do know, courtesy of the Reuters news agency, is that shipping data shows that at least 4 cargo vessels since December have left the Black Sea, those used by Russian arms exporters for arms shipments, and have reached the port of Tartus, this on top of a 5th vessel. So, Joshua Landis, how key are the Russians in all of this?
The Russians are important. So are the Chinese and the Iranians, who are going to be resupplying the Syrian army. And as your last speaker said, it's not a fair fight. And the Syrian regime is quite powerful as long as the army stays together. But increasingly, there have been important defections from the bottom ranks of the army. And the Syrian population is becoming mobilized. The opposition is getting stronger all the time. We saw demonstrations in Mezze, in the heart of Damascus, over the weekend. So, but in terms of firepower and weaponry, the regime is still very powerful.
The next president of China, Xi Jinping, has been in Turkey in the past couple of days. He's been praising Ankara for its rising clout on the world stage. Suat Kiniklioglu, tell us what's been going on behind the scenes. Have you been able to convince Beijing to waver?
Well, the trip has been pretty much dominated by economic issues rather than Syria, but obviously Syria came up. Turkey conveyed its disappointment to the Chinese about the veto that they exercised in the Security Council. I think we are in a situation right now where the sides are pretty much confirmed. On the one side, it is the many regional countries, including Turkey, the United States, and most Europeans, I would say. And on the other side, it's Russia, China, and Iran who's supporting Syria. But I think I understand the mood, the lack of interest in the United States to be seen as a major player in Syria. But I think in the end it will have to happen with some sort of American engagement. I mean, I don't know the exact modality, and that's maybe what needs to be discussed in Tunis. But the United States cannot stay out of this. I mean, we hear from many Republicans, from Senator McCain and others, all sorts of things. But I understand there is an election campaign. We either should not raise our voice and take a position, or we should follow up. And I think both regional countries, including Turkey, and Arab countries, will need to form a coalition that is determined to end the Syrian regime killing its own people. And whether it's done through arming the opposition or through other means is another issue. But we cannot stay away from this. This is too important. I would say that Libya was even a sideshow in comparison with how important Syria is for both the region and the whole geopolitical setup.
Are you saying outright that it's up to Washington, not Ankara, to lead the outside push?
No, I'm not saying that. I mean, I think it needs to be a coalition. But if I heard Joshua Landis rightly, I think he said that there is no appetite for the United States in getting involved in something like this. And if that's the case, then I think you'll find regional ownership very reluctant on that. The United States needs to extend its political support and probably more than political support as well.
On that score, in the past 24 hours, ahead of that Friends of Syria gathering that's due to take place Friday in Tunis, we heard a State Department spokesperson in Washington openly hinting about perhaps one day arming the opposition.
We don't believe that it makes sense to contribute now to the further militarization of Syria. What we don't want to see is the spiral of violence increase. That said, if we can't get Assad to yield to the pressure that we are all bringing to bear, we may have to consider additional measures.
Joshua Landis, do you think that the State Department's responding to events in Syria, or as Suat Kiniklioglu is suggesting, to pressure from the Republicans on the campaign trail?
Look, everybody wants to do something about Syria, but we have gotten into a you first situation. And I think, for a while, people were hoping that the Arab League would take a lead. Qatar said the Arabs should lead this with military intervention. Saudi Arabia immediately backed away and threw the ball and said no Arab military intervention, threw the ball back to the UN. There it was vetoed. People have looked at Turkey and kept on saying Turkey should lead the way. Turkey says, no, we're not going to lead the way. We have to get real backing for this. Why? Because Syria is a big country of 24 million people. There are ethnic divisions. It's unclear who the real leadership is of the opposition. Who are you going to give the arms to? Burhan Ghaliun in Paris, or are you going to give them to the militias on the ground, the head of the Free Syrian Army who's based in Turkey? This is something that all the different countries have to agree upon.
But this is a radical change, isn't it? That suddenly Washington is openly thinking about it at least.
Yes, well, they're thinking about it, but they haven't really stepped up to the plate. They're sending a little warning shot over the bow. But, you know, the trouble is once you start arming the opposition, the death rate is going to go up because the Syrian regime is getting arms from the Soviets. They're going to start bringing in heavier arms. And then you have to commit to take down the Syrian regime. At that point, you're on the slippery slope to intervention. Then, if there's not one militia that you're arming, you end up with an Iraq-type situation where when you decapitate the regime, as we did with Saddam Hussein's Ba'ath Party, you get a civil war, and the death rate goes up and spikes. And there, fortunately, America was in the middle of Iraq, and they could try to officiate this battle, but it was years of struggle. And that's what I think Obama does not want to get the United States into. And that's why there's such reluctance.
Amr Abed-Rabah, we heard in part one the spokesperson for the Red Cross saying how each day matters. So if we're going to get, for instance, a humanitarian corridor, which is what the French have been openly asking for, that will require at some point military logistics. What do you think is the right measure here?
I'm very reluctant or doubtful of any foreign military intervention. I don't think at all it's the right position for Syrian people. I was very much an admirer of people like Riyad Matar, you know, who was killed in the summer and who was very much into non-violence. Of course, things have changed, but let's say in the 1 year of the revolution now, probably 9 months have been with a 95% of the movement that was totally without any weapons, and it was very strong at that time. Now that there is the Free Syrian Army and the many weapons, it gives a real excuse for the Syrian government to shell these areas, because they say, you see, there are armed people, there's an army, we're shelling an army, etc. We're not shelling civilians, blah, blah, blah. So I don't think, I believe the pressure is good, the economical pressure, the moral pressure, I mean, even political, and to work on several levels. But I'm not sure that sending tons of weapons will, I agree with one of the last people who spoke. I mean, you give a lot of weapons, then the Syrian regime will have a lot of weapons too, and that's not very good for the people.
Suat Kenikilioglu, do you think that Ankara and Paris are on the same wavelength when it comes to the issue of a humanitarian corridor?
I'm not sure. I mean, the details of such a corridor and how it could be implemented, I'm not privy to them. But I think the moment you talk about humanitarian corridor, buffer zone, all kind of things, these are interventions which would probably lead to events where you would have to go even further. And I think that's the difficulty of the international community, including Turkey, of making a decision of whether we are ready to make that leap. But what I suspect will happen is there will be a continuation of indecision or measures and a lot of talk that would not actually facilitate into concrete action. We will see the increase of violence. The Assad regime has already shown after the Security Council fiasco that it is now willing to wipe out whatever is opposing it. And we might see this even actually spilling over to other parts. And I think a whole cancer in the region is likely to remain for quite some time. I don't know whether Turkey is ready to take the leadership. I mean, I personally would be very happy to see that. But I'm not sure whether the government is ready here to do that. But provided there is an appropriate coalition and a clear partner on the ground, I think there are things that can be done, and a humanitarian corridor might be one of them. But as I said, I'm not privy to the details of such a corridor and how that would work.
By the way, a side issue on all of this, but probably an important one. In an article headlined, Syria, Paris, and Ankara working as cold-shouldered allies, French newspaper Libération's columnist describes how French diplomatic initiatives over Syria are getting shrugged off by the Turks, still seething over a bill in parliament here criminalizing the denial of the Armenian genocide. Our contacts are only happening by proxy through researchers, sighs a diplomat, end quote. Do you see, Suat Kenikilioglu, Friday's meeting in Tunis as a way of mending fences with the French?
Well, I hope so, but I think I cannot escape underlining how stupid it was by the Sarkozy administration to push something forward that was obviously geared towards election politics in France. And now we see all the damage that has created on such an important issue like coordination on Syria.
All right, and since we're on the subject of perusing the French papers, this one's for Joshua Landis. Earlier we mentioned the Republicans putting pressure on the Obama administration, but they're not alone. French satirical newspaper Le Canard Enchaîné quotes French intelligence sources who want the Obama administration to do more when it comes to arm twisting with the Russians and the Chinese. They find them a bit limp. Do you agree with that?
I don't know what they want. You know, we could start a trade war, I suppose. I'm not sure we would win. That's the trouble. Obviously, China and Russia feel emboldened, and they also are strong allies with Iran. And China in particular has invested billions of dollars in Iran. And I think they feel that if Syria is to fall, that Iran will be next, and that they would lose a lot of money, and they would lose a major source of their energy intake, and so we've got a real structural problem, and I'm not sure whether the United States is in a position today to strong-arm China in that kind of struggle.
Final point, Amr Abed Rabo, there's been criticism on the part of the French and others, the British as well, of a splintered Syrian opposition. Do you see the opposition coalescing, getting its act together, becoming more structured?
We all look forward to that. You know, it's very important. But on the other hand, it's quite understandable. I mean, there's no the opposition. What is called the opposition have been suffering for the last 40 years, of many killings, many people in prison, tortured, etc., and a lot of them abroad. So there are so many different cultures today, and they all have to come together now. I think they have a long time now to discuss. It's now time maybe to really unite and to talk together. I know it's not easy. I know it's, but it's a real historical responsibility. You know, if this movement fails today, might be more of the, I mean, not more, but let's say on the same level, might be because of the Syrian regime toughness and because of the Syrian opposition disorganization. So we have to be very careful about that, and we really look forward. And we ask them all together to make huge efforts. It's needed.
Amr Abed Rabo, I want to thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
On what's been a sad day for our profession. I also want to thank Joshua Landis for being with us from the University of Oklahoma, and Suat Kiniklioglu for being with us from Turkey. And we want to thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate. Stay with us. Coming up next, it's time for business. Tom Burgess, Watson Tells All.